Thank you guys so much for being here. Appreciate it. Really excited to spend some time with you guys. Time is so precious these days, so kind of giving us your time is important to me. I want to make sure that we really add a ton of value in the time we spend together. I'm going to jump right in, but the first thing I want everybody to understand is that I do believe that social media content and content creation is going to be a huge differentiator for success over the next several years, particularly content that's relevant and of the moment. So we're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to talk about some tactics. The other piece that I want to just kind of explain is that, this is, I believe, an incredible time in the market for us to be visible. Anytime the market shifts like this, consumers have questions, they have concerns, and we have a couple of different options, right? So we can either be not visible, right? We can put our heads in the sand and hope that they figure out how to navigate, a challenging environment, or we can be a lighthouse and be inspirational and be a guide to help them kind of get through the darkness, if you will. So I want to invite you guys to think about that idea of like, okay, which direction do I want to take here? Do I want to be that lighthouse? Do I want to be that bright spot for people to help them, navigate challenging times, or to provide inspiration for what they could possibly do? And one of the reasons why social content and basically creating content can make sense is this idea that you're one idea or one relationship away from the job or the life that you've dreamed about. And one thing that I've learned, particularly in the last few years, is that by being more involved with communities and being in the right places and getting myself into the right rooms, I'm able to meet different people that can change the course of my life and potentially the trajectory of my career. And so I want to encourage you guys to think of content also as a way to expand your network. And it's not just about just the idea of creating content, right? Like the benefits can be far-reaching, and we'll talk specifically about that. But I've learned a lot from this concept, and I encourage you guys to kind of apply that. So when we think about why do we do social media, the first piece of this that I think is super important is communication, right? So the beauty of social media is we have the ability to use free platforms, right? We have to pay potentially to create the content, but the platforms themselves are completely free. So we can communicate our message much more efficiently because we can go from one to many versus one to one, right? So we get to amplify our message with a megaphone for all that are interested to hear. The other piece of it is that you can identify your target. And this is something that I want everybody to think about as you're embarking on your content journey or as you continue to evolve your content strategy is, who is your target? So target can mean, am I trying to go direct to consumer? Am I trying to create a broad audience that maybe isn't direct to the consumer, like share content with more people to potentially gain influence, to grow a following, eventually become an influencer, potentially? Do I want to meet other professionals? Do I want to meet trust attorneys, divorce attorneys, financial planners, mortgage people, whatever, to create my partnerships and expand my brand awareness? Do I want to network on there? Do I want to kind of leverage the platform to meet other people that are kind of like-minded and potentially get referrals, right? So in a coastal market like this, you guys have an incredible opportunity to get out-of-market referrals. And by being visible on social media, it's an incredible opportunity, I think, particularly for real estate professionals, to potentially get inbound referrals from out-of-area agents. So next is influence. So if we execute incredibly well on social media, it creates influence and it creates leverage, particularly with the consumer. Because now all of a sudden we go from potentially chasing to attracting. You guys follow me on that idea? So the idea is if we're giving something of value, and that's the key that I'm going to keep hammering on today, right, is educational content, something of value, something that people actually care about. No offense, but like nobody cares how many loans I did last year, unless somehow it benefits them. Nor do they care about your sales data. Like maybe it validates you a little bit. It maybe keeps you top of mind, but truly, like, is there real benefit to the consumer? Probably not so much, right? It's more about me, and it's like I'm trying to sell myself. And the other big pivot that we have to recognize is we have to stop selling on social, and we have to focus on being part of the community and educating. But the natural tendency is we're salespeople, so we want to friggin' sell. Hey, give me a call. I'm ready. We'll get you your house sold in 30 days or less, right? Like that's our default. So I want to encourage you guys to, we're going to talk about a different framework a little bit about that, which we call like jab, 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 cross. It's Gary Vee's terminology, but we'll talk about kind of how you can think about that in terms of the content framework. So the third piece is networking. We talked about it for a quick sec, but networking is the piece that I really didn't see early on in my content journey. I've been working on content for a few years now. I feel like we've gotten much, much better by working with the right people and really learning the content framework that I'm going to show you guys here. But if you execute well, you can build an incredible network on social media. I know young people know this, right? Like that's how you guys communicate, right? Like I'm looking at the young people here, like the newer agents. Some people, that's how they communicate via DM, Snapchat, whatever they're doing. Like that's where they're spending time and energy. And I recognize for some of us older dogs, and I'm middle-aged at this point, like I'm not a new kid around, but I recognize that that's how young buyers particularly want to communicate. Last night, it's 10 o'clock, I'm getting ready for this event, and I'm in my DMs, and I'm terrible at that, by the way. Like my guys are like, hey, you got to check your DMs. Like, why aren't you in there? I'm like, damn, I thought that was spam. I didn't realize that was real, And so I'm in there, and this guy's like, hey, how much do I, this is like 4 weeks old, by the way. The DM is 4 weeks old. I'm like, I am so sorry. I was traveling. I totally missed this. Do you still need the information? And he's like, yes. Guy's in Texas, by the way. He's trying to buy his first investment property. Doesn't own any real estate before. Makes $75,000 a year. He's got some money to put down. Like, this is a lead. And I totally neglected him. But he's like, hey, I really love the content. Yes, I still need the information. So last night, I'm texting with him, like DMing, right? Hey, what do you got? Tell me what you're looking for. Do you need to go investment? Maybe we can go primary residence. What's your situation? Now he's talking to my production partner today at 2:30. So we went from potential lead to now we're in the, somewhere in the conversion process. We'll know. Who knows what happens, right? No expectations on that, but the opportunity is there, right? So the other piece about community that I think is so important, and I've seen some people execute incredibly well here, is that if we give through content, and I want to make sure that you guys get this message because I think it's so important. If we give enough with zero expectation, which is hard to do, but if we have no expectation, we can create community on these platforms. You guys probably already have communities on Facebook that you're very active in, depending on, or maybe on TikTok or Instagram or wherever that is, right? LinkedIn. But if we give enough away, people will be attracted to you because of that, because you haven't made an ask. And when the time comes to make an ask, they're going to be there because you haven't asked the whole time. So that's the benefit of creating a community of people that actually are like-minded, that care about your message. Make sense on that piece? So now we're going to kind of get into more of the more like tactical things, the things that you guys can start implementing right away. And I want you guys to think about the framework for content creation with this lens in mind. So we talk a lot about fear of loss or chance of gain. You guys familiar with the term FOMO? So fear of missing out, fear of loss. The idea is that consumers, just like all of us, we like to be included. We don't want to miss out on the next big thing, the next big opportunity, the next big trend. Like people want, that's very actionable stuff, and I want to know, and you guys do too, how to make money in the next recession, the biggest way to hack your health to longevity, whatever those things are that potentially will help us. We don't want to miss out on that next big thing, right? We have a fear about that. So our consumers do. That's humanity, right? So we're afraid of that, and we also love the idea of a chance of gain. It's the reason why Vegas exists, right? It's the whole concept of gaming, which is I might friggin' win big here. Let me try it out. Let me try my hand. And so with content, we want to talk about this idea of chance of gain, which is simply that, hey, this might be the next strategy you need to win big in this market, or here's how you help. Anyway, I'll get into the framework on that, but I want to just introduce this concept. The other piece that I think is wildly important if you want to grow a bigger audience. Now, not everybody does, and so this is important, right? So some of you might just be thinking about like, hey, I'm not trying to be an influencer. I'm not even trying to grow a big audience, but I want to be engaged with the people that know me and trust me and like me. So show me that playbook, right? So we can talk about that a little bit today. Like, what's that playbook look like? there are other people like myself that I'm trying to expand my audience, because I believe that a bigger audience will, 1, help me with influence, 2, grow my community, and 3, will make consumers think that I know what I'm talking about, because I've got a bigger audience that shows that like people care what I have to say, right? So if we can make content, to do that, we got to make content that's general enough for the everyday person. My team is always like, dude, it's too complicated. You're getting too much in the weeds with inflation and data, like you've got to simplify the message. So we have to make it as general enough that people, the everyday person, Kyler always likes to talk about, and he's my videographer, you guys can say hi to Kyler. So he likes to talk about, hey, it's got to be simple enough that a kindergartner can understand. Yeah, whoever it is, right? Whatever the audience is, right? We shouldn't discriminate with our message. We should try to make it start with broad and then niche down. The other thing we like to talk about is give context early, and I'll get into the details on that a little bit because it's a little bit confusing, but the idea is we need to help people understand what we're going to be talking about as early in the story as possible. Does that make sense? Like, we need to tell them where we're going. We don't necessarily tell them the whole end of the story, but we got to tell them really quickly where we're going. We have to give context very, very quickly, because remember, this is an attention game, right? Social media is an attention game. We are all deciding where to put our energy and focus every single day. Hey, am I going to get into Instagram for a little bit? Is that going to distract me? Swipe, whatever the platform is. Facebook, hey, how much time am I going to dedicate? And then am I going to get intrigued by this enough to stay on the video? Part of what moves the algorithm in technology is how are we engaging with the content? Are we watching it from start to finish? And are we engaged with the content? And the stuff that performs better, listen, the algorithm is designed to make these companies wealthy, right? They need you on the platforms. That's how they get paid. So they're going to show the content that performs the best, because that seems where the users are most engaged. Make sense? So but to do that, we have to get context earlier. We have to tell them where we're going with the story a little bit, give them enough so that they want to see more. So this is probably the most tactical slide that I would say that everybody should make note of as you guys think about the framework for social. And this applies to all the platforms, not just Instagram or TikTok. I think it applies to pretty much all the platforms, is this framework. And we'll get into the details on this, but it's hook, message, and then a call to action. So the hook is something that's going to draw your attention. And I'll give you guys some examples of the hook in a second. The message is, what am I actually saying? What is the message that I want you to hear that I think is going to give you value? And then the call to action is really simple, but a lot of people miss this. It's not, hey, call me and I'll tell you all about it. You know, that's not the call to action. It might be, just follow me for more content. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. It could be DM me if you want to get signed up for X, Y, or Z, but generally the call to action should be super, super simple, and a lot of people screw this part up. So here's an example of, you know, a possible content theme that is something that I would do, right? This is a piece that we might create, which is, here's what the news won't tell you, or here's why you shouldn't believe the headlines. And again, it's this, the framework is opportunity. Where's the opportunity for the potential consumer? What's the real story? What's really happening? So I believe, like, this is how we have to control the narrative, which is how we be the lighthouse, is here's what the news not telling you about, you know, South Orange County real estate, right? That could be a headline, for example. Here's another example. This is, again, like more tactical, right? Here's how you can, and then we say what the achievement is, even if you have a common issue. Let me give you an example. I'll give you a couple. Here's how you can get your offer accepted in a market where there's 20 offers on every property. Here's how you can buy a property with no money down. Here's how you can buy your first investment property if you already own a primary residence. Here's how you can sell your property in a shifting market, or here's how you can sell your property when prices are flat or going down, right? Like whatever that is, right? So there's a million different ways to frame this, but the idea is people want to know people want the achievement. We got to show them how they can do it. Another way to think about this is we can reverse it. So here's how I did X, or here's how my client did X. You guys follow me on that concept? Here's how I sold 20 properties in my first year of real estate. That was for Paul, right? Paul's had a good, strong year this year. Like, he's done well, right? So that content would be interesting for other potential real estate professionals, consumers, validates who he is. Like, hey, here's what I did, right? So here's how my client did X, right? So this one's always powerful. Here's how my client bought their first property in such and such, right? Like in Laguna Niguel, whatever it is, right? So here's how my client, showing basically a little case study, right? And we make a little content piece about this. We're not celebrating ourselves, we're celebrating the client's journey, right? We're the guide for the client, but we have to show success stories to help people understand that this is achievable for everybody. A lot of people have limitations of what they think they can do or achieve because nobody has really taught them the framework for it. When I think about first-time buyers, like the education, financial literacy in our country is, unfortunately, it's terrible, right? People don't know what they can do. And so people are terrified to make the wrong decision. They've gotten some advice from family members or a friend or whoever that doesn't even necessarily own real estate, and they're terrified to take action. So this is how we can flip that narrative. Here's another one. So rather than saying, hey, I've been selling real estate for the last 20 years, I love the reframe on this, which is, here's what I learned the past 10 years working with high net worth clients. You guys see the distinction between, I'm so great, I've been doing this a long time. Like, I might have been selling real estate for 30 years, but maybe I only sold 10 houses. Like, nobody cares about that. The consumer doesn't care. They want to know how you've helped other clients, right? That's way more validating. It sounds better. It certainly looks better. Like, how does this land for you versus, hey, I'm awesome. I've been selling houses for the last 20 years. You should trust me to sell your house. This is even something that you can talk about with your clients, right? Like, I love this reframe of like, Tim, how does this land for you with like clients? Like, if you said this to a client, like, hey, here's what I learned over the last 10 years, like, it lands better, right? Yeah. Yeah. We go from telling to showing. So here's some other things, and we're going to talk about some other specific content areas, but here's some other things that I think are super important to talk about, and you guys can start implementing this into some of your content. This is for ideas, right? Like, hey, I don't really know what to post. Here's some things that you guys can be thinking about as things that you might want to start talking about. And let me just clarify on this because I think it's important. If you're not sure where the market is headed, maybe don't talk about it. If you don't know where the opportunities are, don't talk about opportunities if you don't know where they are, right? Like, so one is, yeah, I think, great comment, like subscribe to Stephen Thomas, know the data, right? We need to understand the data so we can speak about it. And the consumer's not subscribing to Stephen Thomas, by the way. You guys are subscribing, so take that information, break it down into something super digestible for the consumer because they're not like real estate and finance junkies like we are. We love this stuff. They don't care. They just want to know, like, give me something simple. Up or down? Is my value going up or down? Is it bad or good? Like I try to leverage historical data to project what we think might happen, right? Like, we know that in 9 of the last 10 recessions, real estate prices have gone up. So if you're worried about real estate in a recession, we can go back and say, hey, listen, we don't know what's going to happen, but in 9 of the last 10 recessions, real estate prices have either held firm or gone up. So that's real data to support your opinion, right? And nobody wants to get sued. Obviously, you guys are in real estate, and we know that that's a big buzzword in our business, particularly in yours, mine too, but more so in yours, right? Where are the opportunities? So where are the opportunities? Like, there's opportunity right now in the market. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, there are.
Where are they?
Everywhere.
They're everywhere, right? Right now for buyers, the narrative is flipped a little bit. I mean, not completely flipped, but there's more opportunity than there was to potentially get a deal in this market, to be able to sell and then buy, as opposed to have to buy and then sell, right? Like, there are opportunities that exist today that weren't there 6 or 12 months ago. We need to highlight where those opportunities are so the consumer knows, like, again, people are afraid of what they don't know, and so we have to show them how to get there, right? So I love that where are the opportunities. We talk a lot about that, like, hey, maybe don't buy your first house single family, buy a multi-unit property. That's a great opportunity. That's a hack, right? Also, how to profit from this. So we can show people how to profit from whatever that is. People want to learn about that, how to profit from flipping a house. You can tell a story about how to do that, right? Whatever that is that you guys are interested in, these are good hooks as an introductory message to get people to watch what you're going to say. Another piece here that I think is important is huge audience versus engaged audience. You could have the biggest audience in the world, but if the audience isn't engaged, it's totally meaningless. I would much rather have 1,000 people that were like raving fans, or 200 people that are raving fans, than 10,000 people that are following me that aren't engaged with the stuff. Like, likes doesn't really matter anymore. What the algorithms like is engagement, good or bad. The stuff that has performed the best for me got a lot of hate. Like, here's how much you can afford on this salary. We got like crazy amounts of hate on that. Because everybody's like, that's bad advice. Don't do that. Don't listen to this guy. Like, we're just telling what people can afford based on guidelines. But those are posts that actually perform incredibly well because I took a bit of a position. Make sense? So sometimes, for all of us fence sitters in the room, it can be challenging to take a position on something because we don't want to be called out, or we don't want to be proven wrong, or we don't like to offend anybody, so that can be challenging, but it is part of the framework for successful content. Just look at the political landscape and you understand what I'm talking about, right? So here's some content themes that you guys can think about, just general content themes that I think are fairly evergreen, that can last. Some can last a long time, and some might be things that you guys want to think about implementing right away. Some is more current, meaning like some of these strategies, for example, are relevant today but weren't relevant 6 months ago, 12 months ago. 12 months ago is like how to, full underwritten approval, that really mattered. Today, maybe not as much as it did 12 months ago. Waiving all my contingencies, maybe I need to, maybe I don't, right? Strategies shift. And again, these are like tactics that you can share with your clients. Here's my clients are getting their offer accepted over all the other clients. You follow me on that? Like, these are kind of tactics, strategies. So the other thing is inflation. Inflation's super huge in the news right now. Everybody's got questions about it. Heavily searched term. Recession as well. People want to know what's going on. Inflation's a super confusing term right now because most people haven't lived through inflation. We hit record levels of inflation and nobody knows what that means. How's that going to impact me? What does that mean for, what do I do with inflation? What do I do, right? Investing, I think, is always like not the highest engagement, but people are curious about that, particularly in real estate. Lifestyle stuff, I think, is still good content when it's not your focal point. I mean, it can work, but I think if you're doing lifestyle content, that's like really for your friends and family, not for necessarily new people. I mean, it's good to post some lifestyle stuff, but it's not going to get the same engagement necessarily. They might love to see your kids, but like that's not going to go viral. You're not going to get the huge audience from that. Aspirational, educational, valuable. So anyway, general content themes. The other thing for anybody that's posting on TikTok and Instagram is trying to jump on trends quickly. How many people thought TikTok was completely irrelevant like 3 years ago? Just quick show of hands on that.
I still think.
So TikTok, I mean, in terms of traffic, in terms of how many active users there are, has completely exploded. It's overtaken most of the other platforms in terms of active users, and the age has aged way up on TikTok. So it started out like it was only my kids that were on TikTok early. I've got a 12 and a 14-year-old, and now like my best content has performed. My content that's performed the best is performed on TikTok. I got 1 million views on a "How much can I afford" video. That was the best piece of content we've created so far for engagement and actual growth. So some of those perform really well, depending. But yeah, so I would say relatable, right? Like and I know that some of you guys are in luxury real estate, and I think there's content that's appropriate for luxury clients. Definitively there is. But they also like some of the basic stuff too. They want to be entertained just like anybody else does. So we try to make our videos a little bit engaging, quick, sped up. Sometimes if I'm talking too slow, right, I'm a little bit of a slow talker, so maybe they got to speed me up a little bit, whatever that is, to try to get as much engagement and then movement. Sometimes people don't have the attention span they used to have, particularly young people. Like, that's why I'm pacing back and forth, right? I think the thing that I want to, the other thing that we have to recognize, and I've had to learn this, by the way, is like, I may not even be the target customer. So we have to try to take our own filter and lens and belief system off this whole process. I have to stop caring, right? Like, I've made some crazy videos. I just said, like, I don't care if I'm judged anymore, like, I'm cool with it. Because I care about the message and I care about my mission. Because I really want to help people. I want to make impact on a broader scale. And so that fundamental caring that I have is what drives me forward. So if there's hate comments or anything negative, I don't care about that. But I also want you guys to recognize that how you guys use the platforms isn't necessarily how everybody else uses it. But some of the reason why we have to do this is just to keep market share, like just to keep our business the same level that we're at now, or to grow it is by being on the platforms. And I think that's why you guys are here, right? Like, you guys want to either sustain or grow your business or just learn, right? So that's what we're doing. So trends really quick. So voiceovers, lip syncs, trending sounds. So these things perform better because they're highly searched. They're trending right now. So if you catch on a trend, those trends are the ones that can potentially go viral. And there's some agents that do this exceptionally well. They're doing good voiceovers. They're fun, they're engaging. They're sometimes relatable. They're doing like little memes and funny little sayings that they're doing, whatever they're doing, right? That can sometimes perform well. You got to practice it. You got to rehearse it a little bit. They're harder than they look, right? Like, they're actually harder, but some people are really good at it. Trending sound's important too, because when you catch a sound, you can search by the song, and so people will go through the search and look at all the people that created content with that specific song. Make sense? Here's a quick email. So you can create short form content and then share it with your audience, right? Like, you can share it with your clients via email. So this is specifically something I would recommend you guys do. If you haven't read the headlines, U.S. economy is entering a recession, the housing market has started to shift. Create a video to explain where the market is headed and how we can profit from this. 22 real estate market shift. So create the email, embed the video. Now you have a video, you have an email that's going to perform, I guarantee, much better than your standard email. Especially because you're talking, right? Like, they want to hear from you. They want to hear like the HomeBot report and all that. They're going to click that, but they would rather hear from you, like what your take is. They chose to work with you. Specifically for past clients, they chose to work with you. They want to hear from you. Make sense? So it doesn't all have to be video. And this is super important for anybody that doesn't like seeing themselves on video, maybe haven't executed as well there. And I'll tell you, like, my videos started out, I've gotten better at my video, let's put it that way. I wish I could show you before and after, but I think I've gotten better. I still have a lot of room for improvement, but I've gotten better, but I've had to practice at it. So video takes practice, like anything else. Any skill that we want to learn, we got to practice it. You don't just go out and, like, start hitting holes in ones. We got to practice our game a little bit. So this is a skill that we've got to practice. If you don't like video, there's a lot of other ways to create content. Podcasts are an exceptional way to do that. You can talk about the housing market. You can talk about, you can interview people. The easiest one is interview, right? So as opposed to actually being the speaker, you just go out and talk to people. Stakeholders in your community, and creating podcasts is so much easier now than it ever used to be. You can literally do it via Zoom and create a quick edit via Zoom where you go out, you interview somebody about something that you think is important to your audience, right? So I would say for folks that are focused on luxury markets or that really care about the value of their real estate, creating content that is hyper local can perform incredibly well if it's done right and it's targeted. You guys follow me on this piece? So I love podcasts for that because you're getting into like the weeds of what's happening in your local communities. What are things that are potentially relevant? And if you do it interview style, You don't necessarily have to take a position because your guest is going to take the position, right? So if you guys don't want to take a position, you're like, hey, let me interview a city council person on whatever's going on. What do we think of this new development project? Maybe we interview the developer, whatever it is. Anything that's material to potentially real estate values, which is schools, businesses, restaurants, parks, local events, charities. If we live in an equestrian community, equestrians, right? Like all those different things that are relevant to your audience that they care about, an incredible way to get engagement there. So podcasts shouldn't be overlooked. It's the easiest thing oftentimes to execute on. Let me show you really quickly a few tools in Instagram that we can be thinking about as a bit of a framework for how to execute really well. So there's a lot to this. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I'm just going to introduce some basic ideas. So the idea is posts, right? Static images, they can be carousels, they can be a video, that's a post. A story is something that you're going to put in your story to create more engagement with the community that you're trying to build. A reel is what is performing best on Instagram right now. So reels are short form videos that Instagram is promoting, and they're pushing that content out to a wider audience. So we are basically doing almost all reels. Very little static content at the moment. We're mostly focused on reels. Live. So as you start to build your network and community, and even if you have a small one, you can do live. You can go on live on Instagram and other platforms too, Facebook and other platforms, but you can use live to promote something that is coming up, and you do need to promote these. Don't expect everybody to show up just because you're going live. Especially if you're in the bathroom or something, nobody wants to see that, right? So like pin posts. So we can, pin posts is a way to create a first impression. So there's certain things that we do. So we pin some things at the top of the page on Instagram to create a first impression, to create a little bit of a narrative of who we are. You can create highlights, which are some things that you want people to visit when they check out your page. Remember, this is a digital brochure, you guys. Social media is a digital brochure for your business. Again, getting super tactical. This is stuff that I paid like thousands and thousands of dollars to learn over the last few years. I want you guys to, if this is what you want to focus on, like please make note of some of the specific things that you can start to work towards. You don't have to do this all right now, by the way. Like these are things that you can build towards to maximize your effectiveness on the platforms. Cover photos, instead of a business photo, sometimes a cover photo that's more relatable. If we think about the platform, we're trying to create content that's appropriate to the platform, and younger users are on certain platforms and older users are on other platforms. So just think about that when we're creating color.
Where's the cover photo go? Is that the one in the corner?
It is. Okay. Yeah, that's the one. That's the main one that they're going to see.
What's a pin?
Again, so the other thing just to express on Instagram, and I'll rank the platforms a little bit based on my understanding, but Instagram has become a much more mature platform at this point. Even though it feels new to some of us, it's already a mature platform. TikTok is less mature and is growing faster. Right now, Instagram is pretty mature. And so we have to recognize that when it's mature, it's harder to break through the noise. It's harder to go viral with your content when the platform gets mature. And there's this concept of underpriced attention, which Gary Vaynerchuk talks a lot about. He's like a big content guru. And underpriced attention is this idea that there are places that you can create content that are less expensive or are less traffic but are going to grow. A couple examples of that. YouTube Shorts. They're going to start featuring YouTube Shorts a lot. It's still right now kind of underpriced and less competition for the audience. So your content potentially could perform better, especially if you commit to the platform. And the people that really want to go hard on social, you have to kind of commit a little bit. You got to pick a little bit. And it's going to change. That's the hardest thing with social, is like the audience is changing all the time. The platforms are changing. How they work and function is changing. So it's not easy game. But also have to recognize that the audience is going to move around a little bit too. So we chase underpriced attention, and then we also have to be willing to move with the audience a little bit. Make sense? So we like the idea of intro titles. Just to cover other, bringing this in for a landing here, we'll do some Q&A in a second. A couple other areas that you guys can think about for content. So LinkedIn, obviously, great for both photos and written content, articles, anything you want to share. Again, this framework of give, right? What is going to help the audience Not so much about me. You can share some success stories, but what do people need to hear on those platforms? Obviously LinkedIn, more businessy, right? So more professional content. It works, performs probably better on LinkedIn than some of the other platforms. We can be pretty casual. You see me in the t-shirt. Those other platforms are super casual. If I'm dressed up on Instagram and like TikTok, I'm super less relatable to most of the audience because people are making videos at their house. It's not curated and highly professional and highly produced content. And eventually people are just going to be like, content creators are just going to be, what you're going to be consuming is just people's lives. And the good content creators are going to figure out how to make their life incredibly interesting to you and me. And some people have already done it. Reality TV has been around for a while. The good content creators will make their life, their day in real estate super fascinating. So white papers, if you're a writer, meaning you don't like talking, you don't like video, maybe start writing, right? You can write articles, you can write white papers, you can submit articles to the newspaper or to other publications. I have some stories about that. Maybe we'll get into it if we have time. Articles, white papers, kind of in the same vein, blogs, another one. So you could go really hard on, some people want to consume content not through video and they prefer to read it. Many people that are older prefer to read the news. My dad still reads the news, right? Wall Street Journal, whatever he's reading, like that's how he consumes his information. He's not on social media at all. He's 80 something, but he's just not there, right? But he's also not my target audience, right? If I was maybe trying to sell him a reverse mortgage, I'd have to figure out like, okay, how do I get this guy's attention? I don't know, I got to put it in like a fishing magazine. I'm not sure, like a catalog, something else. But he's not, I have to recognize that audience isn't going to be living in these platforms, but there's a lot of people that are. My mother-in-law, different story, she's on it. She's super on top of things. She's on most of the platforms. Articles and blogs are another way to get reach, again, with this concept of one-to-many, right? So how do we get our message out to more people, either through written, audio, or video? You guys follow me on that? So last little kind of parting comment before we go into Q&A is the best marketing doesn't feel like marketing. So the idea is we're creating brand awareness, we're sharing and educating with consumers. We're not specifically trying to market them. The more we give, eventually we get. But you've got to give without expectation because the results aren't going to come quickly. We've been working on content for a while now. I'm just finally getting like the direct-to-consumer activity. And depending on what's happening in the market, like that might dictate the activity a little bit. Less people are buying homes right now, so I'm going to have less potential interest. But then there's going to be some that are and that are more motivated than in another time in the market. So just have to recognize that you've got to be patient. And I guess the last thing I want to encourage you guys as I kind of wrap up here is that try not to over-analyze how you're doing. If you learn this framework and you stay consistent and you focus on creating content that's going to get engagement versus likes, you will win. The goal is to try to get engagement. That's the hardest piece of this game, but sometimes you get engagement with a cat video. You never know, right? Like it could be the dumbest piece of content. You're like, dude, what is that? Why are you watching that? Don't waste my time. But sometimes that's the piece that really works. I focus on business content, but try to make it as simple as I can for consumers.